There is a type of relationship that leaves no visible scars. It doesn't begin with shouting or obvious humiliation. There are no dramatic scenes or constant conflicts. And precisely because of that, almost no one notices the danger in time. These are relationships that make you sick in silence. They settle in slowly, like something seemingly harmless. In the beginning, everything feels normal. Maybe even comfortable. The person doesn't seem aggressive. The relationship doesn't seem abusive. But something starts to change inside you, and you can't explain what. You begin to feel more tired, even without clear reasons. There's an emotional weight that's hard to name. A discomfort that never becomes an argument, but also never disappears. And because there's no obvious problem, you learn to ignore it. This type of relationship is dangerous because it confuses you. It doesn't hurt you all at once. It wears you down slowly, almost like emotional erosion. And when you finally realize something is wrong, you've already adapted too much to walk away unscathed. The cruelest part is that these relationships often disguise themselves as maturity. As a calm relationship. As a we don't have drama. But peace is not the absence of conflict, peace is the presence of emotional safety. When a relationship makes you sick in silence, you begin to shrink without noticing. You choose your words with excessive caution. You think twice, 3 times, before expressing what you feel. Not because the other person asked you to, but because something in you learned that feeling is inconvenient. You don't feel free to be whole. Only functional. Only acceptable. Only within invisible limits that were never explained, but that you learn to respect. And little by little, you drift away from yourself. Not because of a lack of love, but because of too much adaptation. That is the foundation of relationships that make you sick in silence. They don't destroy you with violence. They erase you with consistency. And while you try to keep everything working, you forget that love should never require you to disappear in order to exist. Relationships that make you sick in silence are rarely marked by major conflicts. The problem isn't what happens. It's what is never said. What is never resolved. What always lingers in the air. These are relationships where discomfort is constant but subtle. Nothing explodes. Nothing ends. Nothing changes. And this lack of movement creates an invisible prison. You feel that something is wrong, but you can't point to exactly what it is. There was no clear betrayal. No definitive word. No obvious boundary crossed. So you think, maybe I'm overreacting. And that's where silence begins to eat away at you. When feelings can't be expressed freely, they don't disappear. They accumulate. They turn into tension in the body, anxiety, nameless sadness. You start carrying emotions that have nowhere to go. In these relationships, dialogue may exist, but it isn't safe. You speak, but you feel the need to measure every word. You sense that certain truths are too much. That certain emotions are inconvenient. So you learn to stay quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned that speaking comes with an emotional cost that's too high. Silence becomes a survival strategy. You avoid topics. Avoid conflict. Avoid being too deep. And without realizing it, you start avoiding yourself. The most painful part is that this silence is often mistaken for harmony. People from the outside say, "You're such a calm couple." But inside, you live with constant noise. A feeling that you're always emotionally indebted. Healthy relationships don't require silence to function. They can handle difficult conversations. They allow discomfort without punishment. They don't make you pay an emotional price for being honest. When silence becomes the rule, something essential is being suffocated. And what is suffocated doesn't disappear, it gets sick. You begin to feel that you can't be whole in that relationship. That only parts of you are welcome. The calm parts. The useful parts. The parts that don't disturb. But love should never demand silence as proof of maturity, nor confuse the absence of conflict with true connection. Prolonged silence in a relationship is not peace. It's postponed pain. One of the most dangerous signs of a relationship that makes you sick in silence is when you start doubting yourself. Not suddenly, but gradually. As if your perception slowly loses its strength. You feel something, but immediately question it. Did I misunderstand? Am I being too sensitive? Maybe this isn't even that serious. And without realizing it, you begin negotiating with your own intuition. In these relationships, your feelings are rarely clearly validated. They aren't directly attacked, but they aren't welcomed either. They receive vague responses. Topic changes. Prolonged silences. Or explanations that leave you more confused than before. Over time, this creates a deep effect. You start trusting your feelings less and the other person's reaction more. Your internal compass begins to fail. And little by little, you hand over the power to define what is real. You start monitoring yourself constantly. Overanalyzing everything. Replaying conversations in your mind. Thinking about what you could have said differently, the tone, the timing, the wording. As if the problem were always the way you feel, never the relationship dynamic. This type of psychological erosion is silent but devastating. Because it doesn't just make you suffer. It makes you question who you are. When someone consistently minimizes the emotional impact of their actions, you learn to minimize yourself. When your pain has no space, you learn to hide it. And when your reality is frequently relativized, you begin to believe it doesn't deserve to exist. The most dangerous part is that this happens without clear confrontation. There's no explicit statement saying you're wrong. There are insinuations. Comparisons. A subtle atmosphere suggesting you're always too much. Too sensitive. Too intense. Too emotional. And so, little by little, you begin shrinking to fit. Healthy relationships don't make you doubt your emotional sanity. They don't require constant self-explanation to be understood. They don't make love feel like a never-ending exercise in self-correction. When a relationship leads you to repeatedly question your feelings, something is deeply wrong. Because real love doesn't confuse. It clarifies. Doubting yourself is not a sign of emotional maturity. It's a sign you're trying to survive in an environment that doesn't support you. After doubting yourself for long enough, something even deeper begins to happen. You start to erase yourself. It's not a conscious decision. It's a slow, almost imperceptible adjustment. You don't wake up one day thinking, I'll stop being who I am. You simply adapt little by little to avoid discomfort, tension, and silence. You begin giving in on small things. Then on important things. Then on things that were once essential to you. Opinions are held back. Desires are postponed. Boundaries are loosened. Not because you agree, but because it feels easier. The logic becomes, if I adapt a little more, things will improve. If I don't insist on this, the relationship will be lighter. If I give in now, I'll avoid problems. And without realizing it, the relationship starts functioning at your expense. You begin molding yourself to the other person's mood. Anticipating reactions. Adjusting your behavior to avoid discomfort. Your presence stops being spontaneous and becomes strategic. The most painful part is that this is often mistaken for love. For maturity. For knowing how to compromise. But compromising is not disappearing. Loving is not shrinking until there's nothing left. When you erase yourself for too long, something inside you begins to die. Not dramatically, but quietly. You feel less enthusiasm, less joy, less desire. The relationship continues to exist, but you no longer recognize yourself within it. You start living on autopilot, fulfilling roles, meeting expectations, functioning, but not living. And the body feels it. The mind feels it. The soul feels it. Relationships that require constant self-erasure are not relationships, they are emotional survival. Healthy love does not ask you to adapt until you lose your essence. It creates space for both people to exist fully. With differences. With boundaries. With voice. If maintaining a relationship requires you to erase yourself, the cost is too high. Because no connection is worth the price of your identity. Before the mind can fully understand what's happening, the body knows. Relationships that make you sick in silence almost always show up physically first. Because what has no space to be expressed emotionally has to come out somehow. You begin to feel tired all the time. Even when you sleep. Even when you rest. A fatigue that isn't just physical, it's a deep exhaustion that's hard to explain. The body enters a constant state of alert. As if it's always waiting for something. A reaction. A mood shift. Tension in the air. And living like this comes at a high cost. Anxiety without an apparent cause. Lack of concentration. A heavy feeling in the chest. Muscle tension. Digestive issues. Insomnia. None of this appears out of nowhere. The body doesn't know how to pretend. It can't emotionally adapt forever without consequences. While you try to keep the relationship functioning, it keeps collecting signals that something isn't right. Many people spend years treating symptoms without looking at the source. They take medication to sleep, for anxiety, for pain. But remain trapped in relationships that drain their vital energy. The most cruel part is that in these relationships, you learn to normalize discomfort. To believe that living tense is normal. That constant fatigue is just part of life. That a persistent tightness is what adulthood feels like. It's not. The body reacts when you live in self-erasure. When you swallow emotions. When you walk on emotional eggshells every day. And the more you ignore these signals, the louder they become. Your body is not betraying you. It's trying to protect you. It's warning you that something is crossing your internal limits. Healthy relationships regulate the nervous system. They bring a sense of safety. Emotional rest. A feeling of being held. Relationships that make you sick in silence do the opposite. They keep you in a constant state of defense. Even when everything looks normal. If your body feels constantly tired, tense, and anxious within a relationship, the problem may not be you. It may be the emotional environment you're trying to survive in. The body always speaks. The question is, are you willing to listen? When a relationship makes you sick in silence for long enough, it doesn't just affect your emotions or your body. It starts eroding something even deeper, the way you see yourself. Your self-esteem doesn't disappear all at once. It's slowly chipped away. Through small gestures. Cold responses. Subtle absences. Validation that never comes. You begin to feel like you need to try harder to be loved. Be more understanding. More patient. More flexible. As if love were something you have to earn constantly. Gradually, you start comparing yourself. Measuring your worth by the other person's mood. By the attention you receive. By the response to your attempts at connection. And when that response doesn't come, you don't question the relationship. You question yourself. Maybe I'm not interesting enough. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe my expectations are the problem. These thoughts don't come out of nowhere. They're built in environments where affection is unstable. where recognition is scarce, where you're left guessing what you did wrong. Relationships that make you sick in silence create a subtle emotional dependence. You start seeking your worth in the other person's approval. And the less you receive, the harder you try. This creates a dangerous cycle. The more you try, the less you receive. The less you receive, the more you doubt yourself. The more you doubt, the more you adapt. And so, your self-esteem slowly dissolves. You begin to feel small within the relationship. Not because someone explicitly said so, but because the emotional space was never enough for you to exist fully. Healthy love strengthens. It doesn't make you feel replaceable. It doesn't make you compete for attention. It doesn't make you question whether you are enough. When a relationship requires you to shrink to fit, it's not loving you, it's using you as emotional adjustment. If your self-esteem is fading in silence, it's not because you're weak. It's because you stayed too long trying to be loved in a place that didn't know how to hold you. In relationships that make you sick in silence, there comes a point where you know something isn't right. You feel it. Your body feels it. Your mind sends signals. And yet, you stay. Not because you're happy, but because you're afraid. Afraid to leave. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of regretting it. Afraid of discovering that maybe this was the best you could get. This fear doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's slowly built within the relationship itself. When your self-esteem has already been worn down, when you doubt yourself, when you've erased yourself for too long, the idea of leaving feels threatening. Because leaving requires strength. And that strength has been drained little by little. You begin rationalizing the pain, minimizing the suffering, creating reasons to stay. It's not that bad. It could be worse. At least it's not abusive. Every relationship has problems. And in some ways, this sounds logical. But the issue isn't the existence of difficulties. It's the constant emotional cost of staying. The attachment is no longer rooted in love, but in emotional survival. You don't stay because you feel nourished. You stay because leaving feels even more frightening. Silence, absence, emotional distance become familiar. And the familiar, even when painful, feels safer than the unknown. Relationships that make you sick in silence create an invisible dependency. You start believing you need that person to feel even minimally whole. Even though, paradoxically, they are part of what's breaking you apart. The fear of leaving grows as you drift further from yourself. Because leaving requires reconnecting with who you were before. And that can be frightening too. But there is a difficult truth to face. Staying in a relationship that makes you sick is not stability, it's postponement. Postponement of your peace. Postponement of your healing. Postponement of your life. The fear of leaving may be great. But the pain of staying, over time, is often greater. And no relationship should keep you trapped by fear. Even in relationships that make you sick in silence, there comes a moment when something begins to shift. It's not a big argument. Not a dramatic event. It's an internal moment, almost imperceptible, when you begin to wake up. You no longer feel only pain. You feel clarity. It's as if you suddenly stop asking, "What am I doing wrong?" and start asking, "Why does this hurt so much? Why do I feel this way all the time? Why does loving here cost me so much?" This awakening doesn't bring immediate relief. In fact, it often comes with sadness. Because seeing reality also means seeing everything you've endured. You begin to notice patterns. Conversations that never move forward. Promises that never materialize. Changes that exist only in words. And most of all, how often you've been trying alone. Awakening is the moment when you stop romanticizing suffering. Stop calling love what is, in practice, emotional scarcity. Stop confusing attachment with connection. You begin to understand that love shouldn't be a constant exercise in endurance. That it's not normal to feel exhausted inside a bond. That it's not maturity to silently tolerate what hurts you. This moment is uncomfortable because it shatters illusions. Illusions that it will get better. That if I try a little more. That deep down, they love me. Awakening forces you to face a difficult question. If nothing changes, can I live like this for more years? And when the answer starts to become no, something inside you shifts. You may not yet be ready to leave. But you're no longer completely asleep. And that changes everything. Because once you see, you can no longer pretend you don't. The body no longer accepts it. The mind no longer justifies it. The heart is no longer easily deceived. Awakening is not the end of pain. But it is the beginning of truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is always the first step toward emotional freedom. When you begin to awaken, something inevitable happens: grief. But it's not a common kind of grief. It's not only for the person. It's for the relationship you imagined, believed in, and hoped for. You start to suffer not just because of what happened, but mainly because of what never did. The conversations that never became deep. The promises left hanging. The care you gave that never returned in the same measure. This grief is silent because, often, the relationship still exists. You're still together. You still talk. You still maintain an appearance of normality. But something inside you has already begun to say goodbye. You replay moments, not to insist, but to understand. To accept that it wasn't a lack of effort. That it wasn't a lack of love on your part. That some relationships simply can't meet you where you are. This is a confusing phase. Because you feel longing while still present. You feel pain while still trying to smile. And you feel guilt for beginning to emotionally detach. But this internal distancing is not coldness. It's self-protection. Grieving what never was hurts because it involves hope. You don't just lose someone. You lose a version of the future you built inside yourself. Plans. Ideas. Expectations. And letting go of that requires emotional courage. Many people try to skip this phase. They pretend it didn't hurt. That it didn't mean that much. But unprocessed grief turns into accumulated emotional weight. Allowing yourself to feel this pain is part of healing. It's acknowledging that you were fully there. That you tried. That you believed. And that now you're choosing not to keep losing yourself. This grief marks an important transition. You begin separating emotionally before any external decision is made. And that doesn't mean weakness. It means something inside you is reorganizing. Letting go, even internally, doesn't erase the love that existed. It simply recognizes that it wasn't enough to sustain you. And that, as painful as it is a profound act of honesty with yourself. After the awakening, the grief, and the pain, a quiet, yet decisive, moment arrives. The moment when you begin to choose yourself. It's not an impulsive choice. It's not anger. It's not revenge. It's clarity. You begin to understand that love should not cost you your mental health. It shouldn't steal your sleep. It shouldn't keep you in a constant state of alert. Nor require you to shrink in order to be accepted. Choosing yourself doesn't mean denying what you felt. It doesn't erase the story. It means recognizing that you also matter within any relationship. You start redefining what love is. No longer intensity. No longer constant sacrifice. But safe presence. Consistency. Mutual care. This choice changes how you relate to everything. You begin listening to your body. Respecting your limits. taking your feelings seriously. And most importantly, you stop negotiating your peace. Healthy relationships don't require you to constantly prove your worth. They don't leave you confused. They don't make you sick in silence. They don't make you feel small to fit in. Healthy love expands, strengthens, holds you. Maybe you're still in the middle of the process. Maybe it still hurts. Maybe fear is still present. But choosing yourself is never a mistake. Because staying in a relationship that makes you sick isn't loyalty, it's self-abandonment. And you were not born to emotionally survive relationships. You were born to live. If there is one thing this journey teaches, it's this. The right love doesn't erase you. It gives you back to yourself.